dissertation is titled Interpreting at 360 Degrees Between Theater and Translation and aims at exploring the concept of interpreter in each of its facets, with a main focus on the theater world. To write out this work, I asked myself, what does an actor have in common with an interpreter? Answering my own question, I soon realized how much these two professional figures, which can at first appear very different, actually have in common. An actor interprets a role, a person, who can also be totally distant from their actual personality. Therefore, an actor works as a medium, a tool through which they embody a character originally thought by someone else. In a similar way, a linguistic interpreter becomes a mean through which a concept or a message is communicated from a language into another. Without the actors, many characters written on paper would never come to life. Without the interpreter, many messages would remain incomprehensible for all those people who don't speak its so-called source language. Therefore, an interpreter can be seen as a bridge between two languages, cultures, codes, or words. Starting from these acknowledgements, I compare these two disciplines, which represents my greatest passions, the translation and interpretation universe and the acting one, and so I reflected on their current but also future interconnections. The translation of theater pieces is, for example, an important branch of the translation sector nowadays, which dates back to the Prague School of 1930s, when the Czechoslovakian Jan Mukarovsky laid the foundations for the concept of drama or theater semiotics. It is not easy to translate a theater piece, as it presents unique features, different from any other type of literary text. First of all, it is closely bound to the pragmatic context, meaning that everything written onto the script, whether it is a line, intertitle, or indication, must always be performable on the scene. Second of all, it is always present-oriented, meaning that the audience must be under the impression that everything is happening in real time, even if the events take place in the course of days, months, or even years. A theater piece is almost always characterized by the so-called deictics, that is, expressions or words that, if taken out of the scenic context in which they are pronounced, wouldn't make any sense. Last but not least, when translating a theater piece, it's important to take into consideration not only the words, but rather also the gestures, voice tones, and movements of the actors, which are complementary to the performance, and take therefore the name of performative language. But how can the interpretation field fit into the theatrical one? I asked myself this question, to which I could only give a partial answer. The theater world is, up to today, only accessible to a given group of people, yet every day new ways to expand the number of theater consumers get created and experimented. Looking into the Western conception of the word theater, which comes from the Greek word theatron, literally the place to contemplate, it is clear how theater is traditionally considered as a form of art only accessible through our sight. However, recently some theater makers have experimented a new type of multisensorial performance, in which each of our five senses get involved. This type of experience is not only fully immersive, but also opens up a way through for visually impaired people. This year, I had the chance to watch Van Gogh Café, an innovative play which retraced the last stages of the famous painter's life before his tragic death. On the occasion of the 117th anniversary since his birth, an interactive reproduction of Starry Night was made, which people could also touch and smell. During the play itself, the visual scenes performed by the actors were integrated with fragrances, projections of his masterpieces, and live music performances, gifting the audience with an out-of-the-ordinary experience. This is just one of the ways in which we are trying to make the theater world more accessible and inclusive. Recently, a new professional figure was born, the so-called performer-interpreter, who not only has the linguistic knowledge to translate a theater piece into another language, but also the actorial ability to interpret the performance and everything that complements it, such as gestures, voice tones, and emotions of the actors on stage. Subtitles represent another tool to make performances accessible to speakers of other languages, which are traditionally used in the opera. That is why theater can only benefit from the contact with the translation and interpretation field, and I hope that, in the future, the concept of performance will continue to be rethought, so that we can make theater accessible to a higher number of people. Thank you.